With just 2 days until elections in Taiwan, 3 parties are gearing up for a showdown that will shape the island's relations with China. The ruling Democratic Progressive Party are leading the polls. They've used their time in power to strengthen ties with the U.S. And they're facing the opposition Nationalist Party that wants to build stronger relations with Beijing. But many voters are more concerned with economic problems. The Taiwan People's Party has joined the race focused on issues like affordable housing and job security. Now, both the presidency and the legislature are up for grabs. DW's James Chater met some of the candidates who are running for office.
Morning rush hour in Taipei, and a day of campaigning has begun early for Tseng Bo-yu, a legislative candidate for Taiwan's ruling party, the Democratic Progressive Party, or DPP. After 8 years in power, her party is bidding for a historic 3rd successive term in office. They say opposition parties would be too soft on China, and say this election is fundamentally a choice between Beijing-led dictatorship and democracy. And this is the grassroots of Taiwanese democracy they say they're defending. Tseng, in a sweep of her constituency, chatting with locals about the future of the morning market.
For most people in Taiwan, this is what an election looks and feels like. Candidates at local morning markets, meeting with voters and shaking hands. All this, of course, feels very far away from any tensions with Beijing, but those concerns are never far from the front of voters' minds.
In recent years, China has been ramping up military threats and propaganda like this, as the DPP, under President Tsai Ing-wen, has strengthened ties with the US. The party's candidate for the top job, current Vice President Lai Ching-te, says a firm rejection of China is the only way Taiwan can protect its democracy. Current President Tsai Ing-wen can't run again due to term limits. China perceives Lai as more determined to declare independence, despite him saying that's not his plan. But Chinese President Xi Jinping insists what he calls reunification of Taiwan with China is inevitable, by military force if necessary.
Is there a concern within the party that if Lai Ching-te does win, the tensions will increase with Beijing?
They always use that as a threat. For sure, we want to maintain the safety and the status quo in this region, but I don't think this should be something that influences our own determination for democracy.
But for many across Taiwan, conflict with China feels closer than ever. Members of Taiwan's main opposition party, the Kuomintang or KMT, like Lim Peixiang, blames at least in part the current government.
Be close with your friends, but be closer with your enemy. DPP just keep pushing China away, far away as possible. That's not a way how to treat the one that really has threat on you.
Lin is running for Taiwan's legislature in the northern port city of Keelung. Reports on the latest Chinese activity in the Taiwan Strait form the backdrop to this day of campaigning in the city's local market. Lin says Taiwan needs to strike a better balance between its relations with the US and China. His party would reopen trade talks with Beijing, which in any case is Taiwan's biggest trading partner.
We don't have to like our business partner. We may have to compete with our business partner, but you have to show them their proper respect.
And that's something the KMT's presidential candidate, former policeman Hou You-yi, plans to do. China likely favors a KMT win, believing it will take a friendlier stance on cross-strait ties. But the party's approach alienates many younger voters who fear Taiwan's sovereignty could be eroded.
One of the things the KMT has historically struggled with is attracting young voters.
Yes.
Do you feel like that's still the case at this election?
I think KMT right now is trying to speak the truth and try to speak to the language that the younger generation can understand. I think it's important, which they are trying. Maybe they don't do good.
Succeeding?
Not yet. In my opinion, not yet.
In this election, there's a new party looking to do just that, to appeal to the many people tired of traditional political divisions. The savvy social media strategy of the Taiwan People's Party, or TPP, is proving popular with young Taiwanese voters.
Many people in Taiwan are so fed up with the old two parties. Both KMT and DPP don't have the ability to govern Taiwan, to make Taiwan better.
Legislative candidate Li Youyi says she joined the TPP to tackle Taiwan's domestic issues, like low wages, high house prices and energy security.
This is a really big night for Youyi. This constituency here in New Taipei has been won by the ruling party, the Democratic Progressive Party, every time since the constituency was founded. And so the people that she's meeting with, the people that she's shaking hands with, are exactly the people that she is going to have to convince and the TPP is going to have to convince if they're going to be able to change the electoral map at this election in Taiwan.
Li says her emphasis on domestic issues is pragmatic, and that too much attention is being spent on what she says is a stalemate situation with China.
If it's a deadlock that you cannot solve right now, then why are you just focusing on this? You should be more practical. You should solve the problem that you can solve right now.
But of course, the TPP does have a view on relations with Beijing. Their presidential candidate, Ko Wen-je, used to be a mayor of Taipei. He says he wants Taiwan to be a bridge between the US and China, not a source of confrontation. But critics say his position is similar to that of the KMT. Taiwanese voters face a choice between three parties and three visions for Taiwan's future. The DPP says it's a vote for democracy against Chinese dictatorship. The KMT argues its conciliatory approach will lower the risk of war, and the TPP sells itself as the voice of long-overlooked domestic concerns, while also offering a hand to Beijing. But as ever, looming over this democracy is the threat of Chinese attack. The fundamental question facing Taiwanese voters is who can best prevent that from happening.
Well, DW correspondent James Chater, who filed that report, joins me now from Taipei. James, great to see you. So what is Beijing saying about the election?
Well, Beijing will, of course, be watching this election very closely. Just earlier today, we had a statement from the office in the Chinese government that manages relations with Taiwan, essentially saying that Taiwanese should make the right choice. China has warned that if Lai Ching-te of the ruling party, the DPP, does win this election, that there could be a risk of heightened tensions. This is a party, the DPP, that Beijing refuses to communicate with. This is a party that Beijing views as separatists. And so if they do win this election, this would be an extremely significant moment in the history of Taiwan's politics. This would be the first time since Taiwan held full democratic presidential elections in 1996 that a political party has won at 3 successive elections. And so that would take place despite increased Chinese intimidation, increased Chinese military threats. And so that gives some sense that, you know, if Taiwanese voters do select this party, that they're willing to, in a sense, risk that heightened tension because they view this party as the one that they want to go forward with.
James, how do opposition parties in Taiwan plan to de-escalate tension with China?
Well, the main opposition parties broadly have, there are nuances between their positions on how they want to navigate relations with China. But the really key thing is that they say they want to expand dialogue. They want to restart dialogue with Beijing. They say the current situation where there's been very little communication is too risky, and that through dialogue with Beijing that you're able to de-escalate the situation. Now, it has to be said that over the last 8 years during the presidency of Tsai Ing-wen, there has been almost no communication between Taiwan and Beijing. That's not because the DPP hasn't wanted to, but because Beijing has essentially outruled it. They say that the DPP is a separatist party, but because they don't view Taiwan as part of one China, a broader conceptualization of what China is, that they won't communicate with them. Now, that is something that the main opposition party, the KMT, has said they would do, and that's why they view themselves as a party that can steer Taiwan through these geopolitical waters and really lower the dial of tensions here.
James, briefly, if you could, how concerned are people in Taiwan about a possible war, or are there issues that have taken a higher priority in the election campaign?
Well, Taiwanese people are naturally concerned when they hear these types of threats coming out of Beijing. They take these types of threats seriously. But there's really two contexts here. Of course, you have the geopolitical context. Taiwanese people know that they are in a very critical geopolitical position and know the fate of Taiwan has far-reaching implications for the future of regional stability in the global economy. But at the same time, this is a polity of 23 million people that have bread and butter issues that they hope to kind of get out of this presidential election, things like high house prices and low wages. And so, you know, when you're looking at a Taiwanese election, you really have to look at these two contexts. They're not mutually exclusive, and yeah, you have to really understand both to get a sense of what it means to exist in Taiwan at this geopolitical flashpoint.
Thanks, James. DW's James Chater in Taipei.